Maidstone, the county town. It's 1648. The streets are full of soldiers, Royalists versus Parliamentarians. Who will win? Welcome to Kentish Tales and Tales of Kent. You might recall in a previous video I said that by 1647 the long years of the English Civil War were over. Parliament had won. King Charles was in prison on the Isle of Wight. It looked like peace would reign. That was until Westminster Assembly of Divines declared that all festivals were to be cancelled. Largely this was ignored, apart from in Canterbury, if you saw my video, where it all kicked off, where thousands of people rose up and threw the mayor out of town. He came back to town with several thousand parliamentarian forces. All of the ringleaders were put on trial and they were all found innocent. Then a petition was launched to ask Parliament to come to peace with the king, disband the army and lower taxation. Parliament might have been able to fob this all off if it wasn't for the fact that the king had come to a secret deal with the Scots. They would invade England, conquer it, put him on the throne, and he would bring in the Presbyterianism form of Protestantism. Things only got worse for Parliament when South Wales revolted and Essex, and thousands of people were now in open armed rebellion in Kent. The Royalists planned to meet here at Blackheath and take their petition straight to Parliament with several thousand heavily armed men. But it was not the Royalists who first assembled on Blackheath. Oh no, it was Thomas Fairfax, victor at the Battle of Naseby, a parliamentarian hero, and he had 8,000 men of the new model army, and they were going to crush the rebellion in Kent. The Royalists had appointed the Earl of Norwich as their commander in Kent, and he decided discretion was the better part of valour and was not going to fight Fairfax on Blackheath. Instead, he pulled his forces back to Rochester. When Fairfax reached Rochester on the 30th of May, he found that they destroyed the bridge. He was going to have to find somewhere else to cross the Medway. And that's why the Romans didn't cross at this point either. So he travelled further down. Norwich, concerned by this, put troops at Aylesford and Maidstone to prevent him from crossing. By the time Fairfax and his 8,000 men got to Aylesford, the clouds were very dark in the sky and it started to rain quite heavily. But he didn't cross at Aylesford. He just went on straight past. He did leave a few troops here, making everyone think maybe he is, but he certainly didn't. He was heading straight for Maidstone. Swans in the river. No doubt they were on the Royalist side. Some of Fairfax's cavalry reached Maidstone by the Medway, only to find that the Royalists had destroyed the bridge, so they couldn't cross there. All they could see on the other side were thousands of jeering Royalists. They'd have to find another bridge. But was there another bridge across the Medway nearby? Would have been handy if they had boats, I suppose. Mind you, you can only get like, what, 5 or 6 or 2 on these kind of boats. Probably wouldn't have worked. But there was a bridge. There is a bridge. It's here at East Farley. It's a 14th century one. It's an absolute beauty, isn't it? But the Earl of Norwich didn't pay much attention to it because he kind of thought you couldn't get cannons across this or supply wagons. That's slightly undone by the fact that you can keep seeing cars going back and forth. But anyway, he only sent a few men to guard it. But this is where Fairfax crossed. Now it's possible they had to fight a brief skirmish to get his men across, but by 4 o'clock the main body of his army was on the other side of the river, heading for the south of Maidstone. Yeah, we're like walking in the footsteps of history, trying not to get run over, but still walking in the footsteps of history. So they moved out of East Farley and headed towards Maidstone along this road. I mean, I would say this road, actually it's that road down there. But if I went down that road, I'd get run over because it's quite busy and there isn't much of a footpath. But they progressed along the road with fields on both sides, possibly hop fields. But as there were hedges, apparently the Royalists hid in the hedges and fired at them as they went past. Locals cut down trees to try and stop them, but the Parliamentarians, inch by inch, were heading towards Maidstone. Soon they reached the tiny little hamlet of Tovel, and he sent some troops down the hill towards Church Lane to see if there were any Royalists present. There were none, so they pushed right into the outskirts of Maidstone. Panic swept through the streets of Maidstone when word reached them of Fairfax's imminent arrival. But help was perhaps at hand, as Colonel Brockman, an ardent Royalist, turned up with over 800 men, cavaliers, water boatmen, and also London apprentices. But would it be enough to save Maidstone for the crown? The Parliamentarian forces reached here, the outskirts of Maidstone, which are not the outskirts of Maidstone anymore, but it's near the Archbishop's Palace, and where the River kind of meets the Medway. Maidstone itself was under the control of Sir Gamaliel Dudley and Sir John Maney. They were in control of about 3,000 men. And if you look, just next to the Archbishop's Palace, underneath the new bridge, is the old medieval bridge crossing the River Len. And this is the one the Parliamentarian forces were going to have to get across. By this stage it was 7 o'clock, and no doubt Fairfax was thinking in his head how he was going to prepare the attack for the next day. However, an advance guard of his troops under Colonel Hewson started fighting the Royalists. Soon, men on both sides joined the fray, and Fairfax decided that now was the time, and he launched a full-on attack on Maidstone at night time in the pouring rain. Having broken their way through, they made it to here, Gabriel's Hill, where they found barricades. Pushing through those with their ranks of pikemen, they then found that people were sniping at them from the various windows. And then on top of Gabriel's Hill, the Royalists had got cannons and fired case shot at them. Case shot was basically packed full of musket balls and scrap metal, essentially a bit of a precursor to shrapnel. But still, they pushed their way on. One Parliamentarian soldier reported that they did us right mischief when he was talking about the cannonballs, which has to be some kind of massive understatement. Lord Fairfax had been travelling by coach for most of the battle because he was suffering with horrendous gout. But even he, at various points during the day, had to get out to motivate his troops and to fight alongside them. Yeah, yeah, pretty much what I said, yeah. They managed to get to the top of the hill, having been repulsed several times, with dozens of men dying, and then vicious hand-to-hand fighting erupted around the cannons, with people using muskets to batter each other, sword strokes to desperately try and break the Royalists. Not this one, however. This is one from the Crimea in the 1850s. It's a Russian cannon. This plaque represents the spot where the Parliamentarian forces won, where the Royalist defences essentially broke down. However, there was far more killing to be done. Some of the buildings here, they date back beyond the battle itself, in fact. And this gives you an idea about how close the streets might well have been back in 1648. By this point, it was just small groups of men trying to hold back the tide of Parliamentarian forces sweeping through Maidstone. Royalist forces made their last stand here at St Faith's, in a graveyard that once stood here, and eventually they surrendered. Fairfax was surprised to find 1,000 people emerging from the church to surrender. Not this church, actually, because this is a Victorian church, but you get the picture. Then whatever forces were left disappeared into the night as various men scattered through the different country lanes of Kent, desperately trying to escape. So ended the Battle of Maidstone, with over 300 Royalists dead. Many said it had seen the fiercest fighting in any of the battles in all of the Civil War. The Earl of Norwich fled to Colchester, only to be pursued by Fairfax, who put the city under siege and captured him. Cromwell defeated the Royalists in South Wales, then went up to Preston and beat the Scots. But what of Charles? Well, Parliament no longer trusted him and his secret deals, so they put him on trial for treason, and he was found guilty. And who delivered the death sentence? Well, it was Andrew Broughton, Mayor of Maidstone. If you've enjoyed this tale and would like to learn more, then click on the link below and you'll find a reading list with a whole load of resources you can explore. If you have any other people, places or time periods you would like me to cover, then pop them in the comments below. Thank you for watching Kentish Tales and Tales of Kent.